Are we living in a simulation? Consider a video game. Characters move through a world, interact with objects, follow rules. To them, if they were conscious, their world would seem completely real. The physics would be consistent. The graphics would be all they know. They would have no way to perceive the computer running their reality or the player controlling their fate. Now consider this. How do you know you are not such a character? How do you know the world you see, the body you inhabit, the life you live is not a sophisticated simulation running on some unimaginable computer? This is not science fiction. It is a serious philosophical and scientific hypothesis that has gained traction among physicists, philosophers, and technologists. Some of the smartest people alive believe the probability is significant. Welcome back to the Conscious Observer. Today we explore the simulation hypothesis and ask, is anything real? The simulation argument was formalized by philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2003. It goes like this. Assume that civilizations can survive long enough to develop enormous computing power. Assume they can create simulated worlds populated by conscious beings. Given enough time and resources, such civilizations might run billions of simulations for research, entertainment, or reasons we cannot imagine. Now count the minds. If one civilization runs a billion simulations, each with a billion inhabitants, there are a billion simulated minds for every one original mind. If you are randomly selected from all minds that exist, the overwhelming probability is that you are simulated. The only ways to escape this conclusion are to believe that civilizations always destroy themselves before reaching such capability, that advanced civilizations universally choose not to run simulations, or that consciousness cannot be simulated. Each of these assumptions is debatable. None is obviously true. Some physicists have wondered whether we might find evidence of simulation in the structure of reality itself. Any computer has finite resources. A simulation would have resolution limits, shortcuts, optimizations. Could we detect these? Intriguingly, physics does seem to have a minimum resolution. Space and time appear to be quantized at the Planck scale, roughly 10 to the negative 35 meters. Below this, the concepts of length and duration lose meaning. Is this a fundamental feature of reality or a pixel size? The speed of light imposes a maximum rate of information transmission. Is this a law of nature or a processing constraint? Quantum mechanics only calculates what happens when observed. Is this because reality is probabilistic, or because the simulation renders only what is needed, like a video game loading environments on demand? These parallels prove nothing, but they are thought-provoking. The connection between simulation theory and quantum mechanics runs deep. In a sophisticated simulation, you would not compute what no one observes. You would save resources by keeping unobserved systems in a state of potential, collapsing them to definite outcomes only when a conscious observer or a measurement device requires it. This is precisely what quantum mechanics describes. Particles exist in superposition until measured. The wave function is a field of possibilities, not actualities. Only observation brings definiteness. From a simulation perspective, this makes perfect sense. Reality is procedurally generated based on where observers look. The famous double-slit experiment, which we explored in our first episode, could be reinterpreted as the simulation determining which rendering path to use based on whether measurement occurs. The electron goes through both slits because both paths are held in memory. It collapses to one path when the simulation needs to display a result. The simulation hypothesis forces us to confront the nature of consciousness. If our minds are running on a simulated substrate, what does that tell us about awareness? One possibility is that consciousness is substrate independent. It does not matter whether the computation happens in biological neurons or silicon chips or some unimaginable alien technology. What matters is the pattern, the information processing, the relationships. If this is true, simulated minds are genuine minds, not philosophical zombies. Your experiences are real even if your neurons are virtual. Another possibility is that consciousness cannot be simulated, that there is something about awareness that escapes computation. If this is true, we are probably not simulated, but it raises its own mysteries about what consciousness is and how it relates to physical processes. The simulation hypothesis does not solve the hard problem of consciousness. It reframes it. If we are simulated, who created our world and why? The possibilities are endless. Perhaps we are an ancestor simulation. run by our distant descendants to understand their history. Perhaps we are an experiment, testing how civilizations develop under various conditions. Perhaps we are entertainment, a cosmic video game or drama. Perhaps we are scientific instruments, conscious beings created to explore questions the simulators cannot answer any other way. Or perhaps the simulators are themselves simulated, nested like Russian dolls in an infinite regress of realities. There might be no base reality at all, only simulations within simulations, turtles all the way down. This possibility is dizzying, but not obviously impossible. If one simulation can exist, why not infinite layers? The concept of fundamental reality might itself be naive, a turtle looking for ground that does not exist. Does the simulation hypothesis make life meaningless? Some find the idea depressing, reducing existence to mere computation, stripping away significance. But consider the alternative perspective. If you are in a simulation, everything you experience is still real to you. Your joys and sorrows, your relationships and achievements, your struggles and triumphs are genuine experiences, regardless of their substrate. The sunset is still beautiful. Love still matters. Curiosity still drives you. Meaning is not determined by the medium, but by the experience itself. Moreover, if we are simulated, someone went to extraordinary trouble to create us. We might be valued by our creators in ways we cannot comprehend. Far from rendering life meaningless, the simulation hypothesis might suggest we are cherished creations, watched over by beings who cared enough to bring us into existence. Can we ever know if we are simulated? Some have proposed experiments. If reality has a grid structure at the smallest scales, high-energy cosmic rays might reveal it through specific patterns of deflection. If the simulation uses shortcuts, we might find physical laws breaking down at the edges of computability. If the simulators interact with their creation, we might detect anomalies that hint at external intervention. But there are deep problems with all these approaches. A sufficiently advanced simulation could hide its nature from inhabitants. The simulators could patch any glitches we discover. We might be designed to be incapable of detecting the simulation, like fish unable to conceive of water. Ultimately, we might never be able to prove or disprove the hypothesis. It might be permanently beyond empirical reach, a metaphysical question dressed in scientific language. How should we live if we cannot know whether reality is simulated? Perhaps the answer is exactly as we would otherwise. The practical implications of the simulation hypothesis are surprisingly minimal. Simulated or not, we experience what we experience. The rules of our world are what they are. Kindness still helps, cruelty still harms, knowledge is still valuable, ignorance still costly. What changes is our metaphysical humility. We must admit we do not know the ultimate nature of reality. We cannot be certain our world is what it appears to be. This uncertainty is uncomfortable for some, liberating for others. It places us in good company with the great thinkers throughout history who recognized the limits of human knowledge. Socrates said wisdom begins with knowing that you do not know. The simulation hypothesis is a modern reminder of this ancient truth. We began this episode with a question: is anything real? We end with a deeper understanding of why that question is so hard to answer. The simulation hypothesis is not a scientific theory in the traditional sense. It cannot be tested, cannot be falsified, cannot be proven. But it is a valuable thought experiment that forces us to examine our assumptions about reality, consciousness, and existence. It reminds us that the universe might be far stranger than it appears, that the walls of our reality might be painted scenery, that we might be characters in a story we did not write. And yet, here we are, conscious beings asking these questions. That itself is remarkable, simulated or not. In our next episode, we turn to another mystery. Why does the universe seem so perfectly tuned to allow life and consciousness to exist? Is it coincidence, design, or something stranger still? The fine-tuning problem awaits. Until then, remember, whether base reality or brilliant,